Okay, so I've got the Weber Smokey Mountain smoker here. I've got the charcoals at the bottom, almost filled up the section there. The water pan's empty. I'm going to fill that up once I get the hot coals on top of those. So I've got the hot coals going over here in a chimney. I've used almost a full chimney, not quite, but I do more than halfway because I like a lot of hot coals to get started. And those are just about ready to go. Okay, so I've got the hot coals that I just poured over the other coals that I had sitting in the bottom of the smoker. That is how I like to get going. We'll put the midsection and the water pan on next and fill up that water pan. Okay, so I put the midsection and the water pan on. I am putting my second pitcher of water in. I use about 2 full pitchers in there. That gets it about 3/4 full or so. And, you drip a little bit every now and then. You don't want to do that, but I don't think I drip too much here. So it went in there pretty nice and clean, ready to go. Okay, so now I've put both of the racks in the midsection. I'm going to close the lid here. I've got the vent on top all the way open, and I've got the vents at the bottom all the way open. I like to get some good air in there when I first start cooking because you want to get this thing up to temp. Because once you get it up to temp, it stays pretty good. Now that little opening right there, or that little door, I might open that if I need to get some more air in there to get the temp up. But right now, we'll see what happens. Okay, so I've got 2 racks of St. Louis style ribs here. I'm leaving the membranes on today, and after eating the ribs, I can tell you it worked out great, and I would definitely do that again. The rub is 2 parts pepper to 1 part salt. It's coarse ground pepper. I get it from bulk spices section at HEB, and then kosher salt. I started out with 4 tablespoons of pepper to 2 tablespoons salt, and I'm about to rub these up. I'm going to go ahead and coat the ribs with a little bit of olive oil just as a binder to get that rub on there real good. Okay, so I put the rub on. Overall, I added 2 more tablespoons of pepper and 1 more of salt for a total of 6 to 3 for the pepper to salt. In hindsight, after eating these ribs, I'd go back and just use the 4 tablespoons of pepper and the 2 tablespoons of salt that I had earlier and use a little less rub because they came out just a little too peppery this time. All right, grill's been going for about 20 minutes. Gonna add a little tequila here and a little Sprite or 7-Up, whatever you want to use. This is an important part of the cooking process. I call that right there the poor man's margarita. Okay, after about 20 minutes or so, the smoker is about 225, 230, and if that's where it gets up to once I let it heat up for a little bit, I'd probably stick with that for the smoke today. So I went with a 225 cook today. I'm probably going to close the bottom vents about halfway just to maintain that temperature and see how that continues to cook. Alright, so I put both racks of ribs, one on the bottom, one on the top. Going to grab the lid here and close it up because if you're looking, you ain't cooking, as they say. The temperature dropped with the lid off, but of course that's probably going to come back up. So I'm going to see if that gets back to my temperature of 225 that I'm smoking with today. So 10 or 15 minutes after putting the ribs on, the temp's at about 215 or so. I want to raise that up a little bit because I like to get my start temp set early in this cook because that Weber keeps temp real well. Now I've got the bottom vents halfway open, but I'm going to go ahead and open this door here just because I want a good rush of oxygen to get those coals nice and hot, raise that temp, and keep a good temp for the rest of the cook. I just realized I didn't put any wood chunks in the smoker, so I'm about to do that. That door is where I add them anyway, and I don't like to put the wood chunks in before I get the ribs on because that's just wasting some smoke anyway. So next I'm going to show you getting some wood chunks in the smoker. Alright, so I pulled out about 5-6 chunks of cherry wood. That's what I'm using today. And I'm putting those in the door there over the hot coals, just kind of spreading them out a little bit. I like to kind of put a bunch in the beginning because, in the first few hours of your cook is when you're going to really get most of the smoke onto those ribs. So I go ahead and load it up in the beginning. Now I also will go back every hour or so and just add 1 or 2 chunks just to keep the smoke going, because in that Smoky Mountain, those chunks of wood kind of burn up and quit smoking as much after about 45 minutes to an hour, so I like to keep it going. Now the temperature's dropped a little bit with that door being open down there, but there's been some good air getting on those coals, so those have been heating up. When I put the door back on here, the heat that those coals have gotten up to ought to get that thing back up to a good temp that I'm going to cook with today. So I put this door back on, and we'll wait a few minutes and see where the temperature gets up to. Okay, so about 15 minutes after getting the wood chunks in there and getting some air on those coals, the temperature is still down a little bit. So I went ahead and went to the bottom vents, opened them up all the way, because every cook is different with this Smoky Mountain. It's just about getting it to the right temp as close as you can to the beginning of your cook, because once you get it somewhere, it stays there. You just kind of have to get it right with a little finesse here and there. So sometimes it starts off at 250, sometimes it starts off at 200. You just got to work it to get where you want to be for the rest of the day. So I'm working at 225 today. That's where I'm trying to get here. Okay, so opening the bottom vents got me right where I wanted to be, 225. Okay, so about 1 hour into the cook, I'm spritzing these with a little apple cider vinegar and water, about 1 part apple cider vinegar to 3 parts water. I already did the bottom one, so I'm spritzing the top one now. Putting the lid back on. As you can see, the temperature is dropped a little bit on the thermometer because the lid was off, but that'll raise back up to temp here in a few minutes. So I'm going to keep an eye on this, make sure that temperature sticks around 225, because that's where I'm cooking today. And yeah, we'll see how it goes from here. Okay, so after spritzing the ribs, putting the lid back on, a few minutes later, the temp's gone back up to right around 230, 235, which is pretty good. I mean, I'd rather air just a little hotter at 225 than colder. So I'm liking the way this is going so far. I've still got those bottom vents all the way open. I'm toying with the idea of closing them halfway just to maintain that temp and not let it get too hot. But I'm going to keep an eye on it to see how it goes. Okay, so I spritzed the ribs about 45 minutes ago, and the temperature is getting to about 235. Now I'm trying to cook a little lower than that today. I'm trying to stick around 225, so I think I make a little bit of an adjustment here. It's kind of like driving a car. You got to use a little finesse. You don't want to hit the gas too hard or hit the brakes too hard. So what I'm going to do is just close those bottom vents just about halfway and see if that can kind of maintain or maybe even lower the temp just a little bit, so I can stick around that 225 mark. Well, as you can see, I did a little weed eating of some of the big weeds there, because when you're drinking tequila and smoking meat, you might as well grab a power tool while you're at it. But anyway, I'm going to go back to the smoker over here. Now, I wanted to come back down to 225, and it looks like we have. It is right on the money. So being about 2 hours into the cook, I'm going to go ahead and spritz these with a little bit of the apple cider vinegar and water mixture. Okay, so we're about 2.5 hours into the cook right now. The temperature is holding right about 230, and what happened was it gone down just a tad bit a few minutes ago. So I went ahead and opened those bottom vents up again, and now it has gone up, and it's just holding steady right around that 230, 235 mark. It looks like that's where it wants to cook today, and I'd rather have it just a tad bit hotter than 225 than colder. So looks like this is the way we're going to cook today, and that's all right with me. Okay, so we've hit the 3 hour mark. The temp has been holding pretty nice and steady, so I'm happy with that. I'm going to go ahead and check these ribs out because it's about time for a third spritzing, possibly wrapping. I want to check the internal temp of these things. So this is me right now fidgeting around off camera with the thermometer, and now I finally have it ready to go. So I'm going to put it in the thickest part of the rib there and kind of keep an eye on it. Now, I was shooting for an internal temperature of about 165, 170 to wrap these things, but obviously the temperature went up a lot higher. I end up hitting about 183, 185 at the thickest parts of this rib, which was a tad bit higher than I wanted to be. But I gotta tell you, after these ribs came out, I ain't mad at any process that happened in cooking these racks. So I'm gonna go ahead and decide that now is the time to wrap. I want to get them up to about 195, 200 maybe, final temperature internal. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, so I brought these ribs inside and I rubbed them on the meat side with barbecue sauce. Now I'm on keto, so I got this sugar-free honey barbecue sauce to use. But yeah, got that sauce on there. Now what I'm going to do is flip them over and rub the back sides and go ahead and wrap them up. Now I've wrapped them up here, and I don't have to show you how to do that because you're an adult. And I think these are about ready to go in. Before I put the sauce on, I did spritz them just a little bit more. But now that I've got the third round of spritz and barbecue sauce on, I got them wrapped up. They're ready to go back in the smoker. And since I pulled them off at about 180, 185 degrees internal temperature, I'm going to keep a close eye on these and maybe just do them for about 45 minutes to an hour longer, because I'm shooting for an internal temperature of around 200 degrees, maybe even 195. Okay, so I got the ribs back in there. I went ahead and put both of them on the top rack because there was enough room there. And having the lid off for a little bit, I guess got the coals nice and hot, so the temperature spiked up a little bit. Because we're in the last hour cooking probably, I went ahead and closed the bottom vents about halfway again just to try and bring that temp down just a tad bit and stay on top of it. But yeah, we're going to finish out the cook. Hope it maintains right around this temp or even goes down a little bit just to finish out the last hour here. Okay, so about 50 minutes after wrapping them, I'm checking them out to see what the internal temp is at. It's been about 3 hours and 50 minutes total cook time. Now, I was shooting for about 200 degrees internal temperature. I'm going to end up settling for about 194, 195, which ended up being fantastic. But anyhow, you know, I did some other little adjustments in the last 40 minutes of cooking. I did mess with the top vent a little bit, closed it for just a few minutes, opened it back up again. I kept a good temp right around 230, 235, so we finished out real well. Here's where I'm ending up with about the 193 internal temperature, and pretty much decide that it's a good time to take these ribs off and just let them rest for about half an hour. So that's what I'm going to do. Get these ribs off, get that foil wrapped back around them, and I put them in the oven just to keep it insulated. I didn't turn the oven on or anything. I just wanted to replicate kind of being in a cooler or something like that. You could also do that as well. But yeah, it's time to let these ribs rest. Okay, so these ribs rested in the oven for about a half an hour. Didn't have the oven on. I took them out. I went ahead and uncovered them, sat them next to each other, and put them in the oven on broil for just about 3 minutes or so. I just wanted to get that sauce caked on. I added just a tad bit more sauce right before I did that, but not much. And I'm getting ready to try these out. And these are the 3 ribs I cut off first, and they are looking good. Oh, that's just the right amount of bite and tenderness. Not fall off the bone, but just right. Oh, so good.
Well, I've been driving all around Texas, playing these gigs and running from my exes. I've been drinking at all these bars, trying to heal my heart and mend